What if the most haunting cartoons of the 70s and 80s were not the ones you watched, but the ones that vanished before you grew up? Hidden in dusty reels and banned archives lie animated worlds too strange for television. Tales of cosmic dread, forbidden laughter, and surreal darkness. These are not Disney dreams, but forgotten nightmares. Today, we unveil 12 obscure cartoons you never knew existed. Number 12. The Fantastic Adventures of Unico, 1981. When The Fantastic Adventures of Unico aired in Japan in 1981, most audiences had no idea how dark it truly was. The film follows a magical unicorn cast out by jealous gods who wander a broken world, bringing happiness only to be punished for it. Beneath the pastel colors lay a tale of exile loneliness and divine cruelty. The Japanese censors hesitated to show it on public television, fearing the religious implications. American distributors hesitated too, cutting scenes where the gods erased entire villages. Behind the scenes, Sanrio, the company behind Hello Kitty, wanted to create a softer mythology film, but animator Osamu Dezaki turned it into something poetic and tragic. He used watercolor backgrounds and long, melancholy pauses, creating an atmosphere closer to an art house drama than a children's fantasy. Critics were puzzled. Parents thought it was too sad. Kids whispered about the creepy demon who turned humans into stone. When it resurfaced decades later, fans called it an unrecognized masterpiece. The film's melancholic tone and daring moral message influenced later works like Princess Mononoke and Spirited Away. Today, Unico stands as a reminder that even kindness can be punished by the gods of conformity. Number 11. Rock and Rule, 1983. Imagine a dystopian future where mutated animals form rock bands to summon ancient demons through music. That was the wild concept behind Rock and Rule, a Canadian animated feature that terrified investors and confused audiences. The studio Nelvana wanted to create an adult animation epic to rival heavy metal. Instead, they created one of the strangest failures of the decade. Set in a post-apocalyptic city, the film follows a rock star named Mach, who kidnaps a young singer to use her voice in a ritual concert to open a portal to another dimension. It sounds insane. And it was. The production ran over budget, lost its American distributor, and was recut multiple times. MGM censored violent scenes and removed explicit metaphors about corporate control. The U.S. release even replaced the original voices of musicians like Debbie Harry and Iggy Pop. The result was chaos. The film flopped. Critics ignored it, but years later, VHS bootlegs began circulating. Fans discovered its haunting synthesizer score, its surreal animation, and its eerie vision of art turned into apocalypse. Rock and Rule was no hit, but it predicted the rise of music videos, the fall of innocence, and the strange marriage of rebellion and control. That defined the 80s. Number 10. Wizards, 1977. Ralph Bakshi's Wizards was a fantasy film disguised as a fairy tale, yet it hid a warning about propaganda and fascism. Released in 1977, the same year as Star Wars, it told the story of two wizard brothers, one good and one evil, locked in a war that blended magic with the machinery of war. The villain used Nazi footage as propaganda within the film, something no studio had dared before. Critics were stunned. Some called it genius, others called it blasphemy. The censors demanded edits to the archival war footage, fearing backlash from veterans groups. Behind the scenes, Bakshi fought to keep the message intact. He animated much of the film on a shoestring budget, using rotoscoping and recycled backgrounds after Fox cut his funding. When it finally hit theaters, Wizards became a cult hit among college audiences who saw in it a psychedelic allegory about technology corrupting faith. It paved the way for Bakshi's later controversies like Lord of the Rings and Fire and Ice. Forgotten by mainstream audiences, Wizards still burns as a prophetic warning that even fantasy worlds are not safe from propaganda. Number 9. Twice Upon a Time, 1983. Twice Upon a Time was one of those strange experiments that could only have come from the early 80s, part satire, part dream, part nightmare. Directed by John Cordy and co-produced by George Lucas, it used a technique called loomage, where cut-out translucent paper pieces were moved under light to create a glowing fairy tale world. The result was visually unlike anything else, yet it nearly destroyed its creators. The story follows two bumbling heroes, Ralph the all-purpose animal and Mumford the everything else, trying to stop a villain named Synonymous Botch from unleashing nightmares upon the world. It sounds light-hearted, but beneath the comedy lay a cold warning about mass media and dreams being controlled by corporate forces. The studio executives panicked once they saw the final product. They feared it was too philosophical for kids and too childish for adults. Then came disaster. Two versions of the film were produced, one with mild language and one with crude humor. When HBO accidentally aired the wrong version, the backlash was immediate. Parents protested, the film was pulled, distribution halted. For decades it vanished from circulation, believed to be lost, except for low-quality TV recordings. Behind the scenes, the animators described working conditions as chaotic. Production ran out of funds. George Lucas eventually distanced himself from it. But for those who saw it, the film left an unforgettable mark. A weird, glowing dream about the price of imagination. Rediscovered in the digital era, Twice Upon a Time is now praised as one of the most daring lost animations of the 80s. A cautionary tale about creativity crushed by confusion and fear. Number 8. The Mouse and His Child. 1977. The Mouse and His Child began as a children's book, but when it reached the screen, it became something darker, something almost existential. Directed by Charles Swenson and produced by Sanrio, this film told the story of two clockwork toy mice, a father and son, cast into a cruel world after being thrown out by a careless child. They wander through junkyard circuses and battle a villainous rat who enslaves toys for profit. On paper, it looked like a family adventure. In reality, it was a tragedy about survival consciousness and the meaning of love. American censors were disturbed by its tone. Several scenes depicted destruction, cruelty, and despair, unlike anything seen in mainstream children's cinema at the time. Critics didn't know how to categorize it. Some called it nihilistic, others visionary. Behind the scenes, the production faced massive studio interference. Swenson wanted to keep the ending bleak, with the toys trapped in an endless cycle of rebirth, but Sanrio demanded a softer resolution. The compromise left everyone unhappy, and the movie flopped on release. Yet decades later, film historians began revisiting it. They saw parallels to early Pixar philosophy, the idea that toys could have souls that long for freedom. The Mouse and His Child resurfaced through cult retrospectives and midnight screenings, becoming an unexpected legend. Beneath its mechanical shells lies a story about endurance against time itself. Watching it today feels like peering into the fragile heart of the 70s, when animation dared to ask if machines could feel sadness. Number 7. Animalympics, 1980. Long before Zootopia, there was Animalympics, an animated sports parody that was supposed to coincide with the 1980 Moscow Olympics. Produced by Lisberger Studios, the same team that would later make Tron, it imagined a world where animals from every nation compete in a global athletic spectacle. The humor was witty, the animation sleek, and the jazz rock soundtrack unforgettable. But fate intervened. When the United States boycotted the Moscow Olympics, the film lost its purpose overnight. NBC canceled its full airing. The studio's funding dried up. Half the film was shelved while the other half aired as a confusing TV special. Behind the scenes, animators worked unpaid to complete sequences, hoping someone would rescue their dream project. There was another layer of trouble. Critics accused it of being too adult for family audiences. Some segments had political undertones mocking Cold War propaganda. The censors demanded cuts while executives argued over tone. By the time it reached limited theaters, the world had moved on. Years later, collectors unearthed surviving reels and uploaded them online, revealing stunning hand-drawn work and surreal humor. The film found a new audience among animation enthusiasts who saw in it the prototype of modern anthropomorphic satire. Its jazz-infused soundtrack by Graham Gouldman remains a cult favorite. Animalympics was supposed to celebrate global unity, but instead it became a casualty of politics. Its legacy is bittersweet, a film that dared to laugh at humanity's obsessions, yet was silenced by the very politics it tried to parody. It remains a symbol of creativity overtaken by circumstance, an orphaned cartoon born at the wrong moment in history. Number 6. Fantastic Planet, 1973. Fantastic Planet is not just a film, but an experience that crawls under your skin and never leaves. Directed by René Laloux and designed by surrealist artist Roland Topor, this French-Czechoslovak co-production stands as one of the most haunting animations ever made. Its story follows the tiny humans enslaved by the towering blue aliens called Drags on a distant world. It looks like a dream, but feels like a nightmare. When it premiered in 1973, audiences were shocked. The art was mesmerizing with slow hypnotic motion and strange textures, yet the themes were too strong for many countries. The film's depiction of rebellion, slavery, and class warfare mirrored real-world political struggles. Censors in several nations labeled it subversive. Some theaters banned it outright, fearing it would inspire revolt among youth movements. Behind the scenes, production was grueling. Laloux worked with Czech animators under constant scrutiny from government officials during the height of Cold War tensions. Funding nearly collapsed. Topor's bizarre designs, floating heads, insects, devouring machines, and dismembered creatures terrified the sponsors. Still, Laloux refused to simplify. He wanted audiences to feel the unease of oppression through beauty. Over time, Fantastic Planet became a cult beacon for counterculture thinkers and filmmakers. Its imagery influenced music videos, psychedelic art, and even modern science fiction films. What began as an obscure European experiment turned into a quiet revolution in animation. Today, its strange stillness feels prophetic, a meditation on freedom knowledge and the danger of forgetting our humanity. Number 5. Belladonna of Sadness, 1973. Belladonna of Sadness is one of the most hypnotic and unsettling animated films of the 70s, a haunting watercolor nightmare that vanished almost as soon as it was released. Created in 1973 by Mushi Production, the studio founded by Osamu Tezuka, it told the story of Jeanne, a young woman in medieval France who endures brutality from both church and state before forging a pact with a mysterious spirit to reclaim her power. What sounds like a simple folk tragedy became on screen a surreal explosion of sexuality, politics, and rebellion. Japanese censors were horrified. The film was too bold, too symbolic, and far too willing to confront themes of oppression, desire, and witch hunt hysteria. International distributors refused to touch it or demanded heavily edited cuts. In the West, it screened only in underground theaters where audiences whispered about its daring imagery, long drifting watercolor paintings that dissolved into psychedelic visions of revolt. Behind the scenes, the studio was collapsing financially. With almost no budget for traditional animation, the artists created still paintings that moved like living murals. Critics at the time didn't know what to make of it. Some called it obscene. Others saw radical art disguised as myth. For decades, Belladonna of Sadness survived only through poor bootlegs, until a full restoration revealed its true beauty. Today, it stands as a forgotten masterpiece, a warning about power and a celebration of defiance. Footage from the restored version is available online. Number 4. The 9 Lives of Fritz the Cat, 1974. If there was one animated film that made censors lose their minds, it was Ralph Bakshi's Fritz the Cat in 1972. But when Bakshi walked away from the sequel, The 9 Lives of Fritz the Cat in 1974, the chaos doubled. This time, the studio tried to cash in without his direction and ended up producing one of the most chaotic counterculture animations ever made. The story follows Fritz drifting through surreal alternate realities, war zones, deserts, and dream worlds, trying to escape his own failure. The narrative fractures into vignettes parodying politics, religion, and the fading ideals of the 60s. Without Bakshi's control, the film became stranger, darker, and less coherent. Censors had no idea what to do with it. Some scenes depicted drug hallucinations and political assassinations. Others mocked authority outright. Behind the scenes, production was plagued by conflict. Animators walked out. Writers argued over tone. American International Pictures barely managed to release it after repeated re-edits to meet theater requirements. Critics tore it apart, calling it offensive and confusing. Yet years later, it re-emerged as an accidental masterpiece of cultural disillusionment, capturing the hangover after a decade of rebellion. The 9 Lives of Fritz the Cat remains a time capsule of frustration and rebellion. It dared to show that counterculture itself could rot under commercial pressure. Forgotten for decades, its rediscovery revealed a broken gem glittering in the dust, a warning from the past that freedom in art always comes at a price. Number 3. The Point, 1971. In an era when most animated films played it safe, The Point dared to question conformity. Created and narrated by musician Harry Nilsson and directed by Fred Wolf, this film told the story of Oblio, the only round-headed boy in a land where everyone literally had a point on their head. The allegory was simple, yet devastating. It was a quiet protest against the pressure to fit in during an age of cultural conformity. Premiering on ABC in 1971, The Point became the first animated feature ever made for television in the United States. But despite its seemingly whimsical tone, executives were nervous. Nielsen wrote the story while experimenting with new music themes and political metaphors. The idea that a child could be exiled simply for being different hit too close to home during a period of social division. Some broadcasters trimmed dialogue about authority and faith. A few regional stations refused to air it altogether. Behind the scenes, voice actors changed multiple times. Dustin Hoffman originally narrated the film, but his contract dispute led to replacement by Ringo Starr for later releases. Each new voice brought its own interpretation, altering the rhythm of the story, and confusing audiences who grew up with one version only to discover another decades later. Though it vanished from broadcast schedules, the message endured. The Point gained cult status through school screenings and bootleg tapes in the 80s. Its haunting folk score and minimalist animation gave it an otherworldly power. To this day, the film feels like a dream carved from rebellion and innocence. It asks one simple question that still echoes: what happens to those who don't fit the shape of their world? Number 2. Allegro Non Troppo, 1976. Allegro Non Troppo is what happens when a satirist stares straight into the soul of Disney and laughs. Directed by Italian filmmaker Bruno Bozzetto, it mirrored the structure of Fantasia, classical music accompanied by animation. But where Disney offered beauty, Bozzetto offered madness. The result was one of the most intelligent and biting animated films of the decade. The segments ranged from tragic to absurd. A lonely cat wandering through ruins while Debussy's Clair de Lune played. Adam and Eve's cosmic failure set to Ravel's Bolero. Civilization rising and collapsing again and again in grotesque detail. Censors didn't know what to do with it. Some scenes mocked religion, some mocked humanity itself. Italy's state television refused to broadcast it uncensored for years. Religious groups protested, accusing Bozzetto of blasphemy. Behind the scenes, the director faced financial ruin. The production team worked in small, cramped spaces, reusing film stock to save money. Yet that limitation birthed creativity. Each sequence looked handmade, painted with sarcasm and sorrow. Critics later realized Bozzetto had built a mirror for the human condition disguised as comedy. In the years after release, Allegro Non Troppo became a cult artifact discussed in art schools and midnight screenings. Its daring use of music and animation inspired generations of animators from Terry Gilliam to European experimental filmmakers. What began as parody evolved into a statement that beauty without honesty is empty. Allegro Non Troppo still asks the uncomfortable question: are we laughing at the world, or is the world laughing at us? Number 1. Watership Down, 1978. No animated film of the 70s shocked audiences like Watership Down. Adapted from Richard Adams' novel, it told the story of a group of rabbits fleeing their doomed warren in search of safety. But what they found instead was violence, fear, and death. Director Martin Rosen refused to soften the story. He treated it like myth, not a children's tale. The result was both breathtaking and traumatizing. When it premiered in 1978, parents brought their children expecting a talking animal story. What they saw instead were graphic battles, torn flesh, and blood on flowers. Complaints flooded broadcasters. Some countries briefly banned it, while others required warnings before screenings. Yet despite outrage, it became a box office success in Britain, where critics called it the first adult animation of its kind. Behind the scenes, production was difficult. Financing nearly collapsed. The animators argued constantly over tone. Composer Angela Morley created a haunting score that deepened the sorrow, while the song Bright Eyes Sung by Art Garfunkel became a global hit. The contrast between the song's gentle melody and the film's brutality cemented its legend. Over the decades, Watership Down endured as one of the boldest animated works ever made. It proved that animation could carry tragedy without compromise. Every generation rediscovers it and reacts the same way. Stunned, silent, then thoughtful. Watership Down remains a monument to the courage of storytelling that refuses to lie to children about the world's cruelty. Animation was never meant to be safe. These forgotten masterpieces from the 70s and 80s dared to reveal fear, pain, and truth through color and movement. Some were banned, some vanished, others survived by miracle. But each one left a mark on imagination itself. Which of these lost worlds would you dare to revisit? Like, share, and subscribe for more cinematic rediscoveries.